Hey everyone, my name is Ryan, the Nature Gamer. Welcome back to my latest video. And in today's video, we're going to be reading Chapter 1 of Budding Prospects by T.C. Boyle. Now, T.C. Boyle is a famous short story and writer and novelist from America. And one of his most famous stories is Greasy Lake, which a lot of people read in high school. And this is one of his pastorals that he wrote, I believe back in the 70s or the 80s. But let me just read the back for you. All Felix Naismith and his friends have to do is harvest a crop of cannabis sativa, and $500,000 tax-free dollars will be theirs. But they haven't reckoned on nosy Northern California-style neighbors, torrential rain, demands of the flesh, and Felix's improbable new love, a wayward sculptress on whose behalf he undertakes a one-man vendetta against a drug-busting state trooper named Jerpak. As their deal escalates through crises into nightmare, the dreams of easy money get nipped in the bud. And I asked for this for Christmas, and I thought it looked really interesting. And I really liked the Greasy Lake story that I read in high school and college. So I thought I'd read this. So we'll be reading a chapter a day for the foreseeable future until we finish the book. And there's a little note at the beginning. It says, "This book is for my horticultural friends. Plow deep while sluggards sleep, and you shall have corn to sell and to keep." Benjamin Franklin, The Way to Wealth. Why, boys, when I was 17 I walked into the jungle, and when I was 21 I walked out. And by God I was rich. Arthur Miller, Death of the Salesman. Part 1, Preparing the Soil. Let's take a drink of my Baja Blast. Chapter 1. I've always been a quitter. I quit the Boy Scouts, the Glee Club, the marching band. Gave up my paper route, turned my back on the church, stuffed the basketball team. I dropped out of college, sidestepped the Army with a 4F on the grounds of mental instability. Went back to school, made a go of it, entered a PhD program in 19th century British literature, sat in the front row, took notes assiduously, bought a pair of horn rims, and quit on the eve of my comprehensive exams. I got married, separated, divorced. Quit smoking, quit jogging, quit eating red meat. I quit jobs, digging graves, pumping gas, selling insurance, showing pornographic films in an art theater in Boston. When I was 19, I made a frantic love to a pinch-faced, sack-bosomed girl I'd known from high school. She got pregnant. I quit town. About the only thing I didn't give up on was the summer camp. Let me tell you about it. 2 years ago, I was living alone. I woke alone, flossed my teeth alone, worked at odd jobs, and ate takeout burritos, read the newspaper, and undressed for bed alone. The universe had temporarily pulled in its boundaries, and I was learning to adjust to them. I was 31. Hey, that's the age of man now. I sat at the lunch counter with men of 51, 61, 81, slurped tomato rice soup, and watched the waitress. Sometimes I had dinner with friends, shot pool, went to the aquarium, danced to a pulsing Latino beat in close atramental clubs. Sometimes I felt like a bearded ascetic contemplating the stones of the desert. On this particular night, it was in late February, I stayed in. I was reading, absorbed in an assault on K2 by a team of Japanese mountaineers, my lungs constricting in the thin burning air, the deadly sting of wind-lashed ice in my face, when the record La Secret du Printemps caught in the groove and the gnashing squeal as if a stage full of naiads, dryads, and spandex satyrs had simultaneously gone lame. I looked up from my book. Rain knocked at the windows like a smirking voyeur. Small sounds reverberated through the house, the clank of the refrigerator closing down, the sigh of the heat starting up. The fire crackled ominously round a nail in a charred 2x4. At that instant, as if on cue, the front buzzer sounded. It was after 12. I gave the tube a rueful glance. Zombies in whiteface drifted across the scene, masticating bratwurst-like strings of human intestine. Put down my book, cinched the terry cloth robe around my waist, and ambled to the head of the stairs. Insistent, the buzzer blatted again. My apartment was a walk up on Fair Oaks, 3 blocks west of the Mission. The house was a Victorian, painted in 6 colors. I had 4 rooms, a deck, a hallway, and a view. Before the intercom went dead, the signal had become so weak and static jammed I wouldn't have recognized my mother's voice, or Screamin' Jay Hawkins doing "I Put a Spell on You" for that matter. I stood at the head of the stairway and pressed the door release. more curious than apprehensive, and watched 3 shadows dodge in out of the wet. There was a flash of lightning. Hornets and violins shrieked and re-shrieked, the same tortured Slavic measure, like a tocsin. They were coming up the stairs, thump, thump, thump. For one nasty moment I stepped back, cursing myself for so blindly buzzing them in gray forms, strangers, junkies, Mexican confidence men. When I saw with relief that it was Vogelsang. "Felix," he said. "Hey," I responded. He had a girl in tow, her hair clipped short as an East German swimmer's and bleached white. Behind her, 3 steps down, a guy in his late 20s wearing rubbers and a yellow rain slicker that gave off a weird phosphorescent glow in the dull light of the hallway. All 3 of them looked as if they'd jumped off the Bay Bridge 4 or 5 times. Noses dripping, hair plastered, water dribbling from collars and shoes. Vogelsang was grinning his deranged grin. "It's been a while," he said, clapping my shoulder. It had been 2 months. Vogelsang lived in splendid isolation in the hills above Bolinas, making money nefariously, practicing various perversions, collecting power tools, wood carvings, barber's poles, and cases of dried wood rind from esoteric little vineyards like Goat's Crouch and Sangre de Cristo. He also collected antique motorcycles, copper saucepans, espresso machines the size of church organs, sexless mannequins from the 50s, which he painted, lacquered, and arranged round the house in lewd, arresting poses. Bone-handled knives, Tahitian gill nets, and a series of cramped somber oil paintings devoted to religious themes like the decapitation of John the Baptist, or the algolagnic ecstasies of the flatulence. Every few weeks he would descend on San Francisco to brawl junk shops, cruise North Beach, and attend sumptuous mate-swapping parties in Berkeley. Norman Mailer would have loved him. Let's get a sip of my drink. At this juncture, he maneuvered the girl forward. I noticed that she was wearing a delicate silver ring through the flange of her right nostril, and that her toenails were painted black. "This is aorta," Vogelsang said. I labeled her instantly, a sorority girl come punk. She was probably from Pacific Heights, and her real name was something like Jennifer Harris or Heather Mashberg. She gave me a hard look and held out her hand. Her hand was as wet and cold as something fished out of a pond. I ducked my head at her and sucked back the corners of my mouth. "And this," Vogelsang was saying, gesturing toward the flickered figure 3 steps down, "is Boyd Doust, a friend of mine from Santa Rosa." The rain slicker seemed to erupt in response, and a big bony hand lunged over the top of the rail to grasp mine. I was staring into the face of a Yankee farmer, angular, big-eared, eyes the color of power line insulators. "Now living in Sausalito," he said, clawing at his dripping hair with his free hand. The other hand, the friendly one, was still pumping at mine as if he was expected my fingertips to squirt milk or something. I was barefoot, my bathrobe was dirty, the skipping record ripped at my nerves like a 2-man saw. I invited them in. Vogelsang strode into the living room, unzipped his sodden jacket and draped it across the back of a wooden chair, characteristically brisk and nervous in the way of a feral cat attuned to the faintest movements, the tiniest scratchings. He smelled of rain and something else too, something musky and primal. It was a minute before I realized what it was. He reeked of sex. When he had arranged the jacket to his satisfaction, he turned to enlighten me on this and other matters, pausing only to produce a plastic vial of breath neutralizer and squeeze off 2 quick shots before launching into a monologue describing his recent acquisitions, touching on improvements to his property in Bolinas and the progress of making investments in the commodities market, and giving a lubricious play-by-play account of the urbane orgy he and the girl had attended earlier in the evening. He spoke as he always did, with a peculiar mechanical diction, each word distinct and unslurred, as if he were a linguistics professor moderating a panel discussion of the future of the language. I puttered round the apartment, half listening, changing the record, lowering the volume on TV, digging out an ashtray, 4 bottles of beer, and a plastic envelope of pot. Vogelsang followed me step for step, lecturing. Doust and the girl sat on the couch. As soon as the pot hit the coffee table, Doust snatched it up, opened the baggie, and sniffed it. Breathed it, rather, like a snorkeler coming up for air. Made a disdainful face and tossed the bag back down as if it contained some unspeakable refuse on the order of dog turds or decomposing sparrow eggs. I caught this out of the corner of my eye as I was slipping Stravinsky back into his jacket. Boyd's just finished up his master's degree at Yale, Vogelsang said, easing down in the arm of the couch and taking a swig of beer for dramatic emphasis, in botanical science. I pulled up a chair. Congratulations, I murmured, glancing at Doust, and abruptly changed the subject, who wanted to hear about some overgrown preppy and his academic laurels. I've been that route myself. I said something about the rain, then made a bad joke about the quality of the entertainment at Vogelsang's party. You don't understand, Vogelsang persisted. Botanical science. He can grow anything. Anywhere. I nodded. The girl was looking at me as if I were a sandwich in the window of a delicatessen, and Douse was squinting at a copy of Scientific American he dug out of the pile of newspapers on the floor. Muffled shrieks came from the TV. I glanced up to see the heroine trapped in a hallway made of flimsy plasterboard while the hairy arms of zombies, I marveled at their insatiability, punched through the walls to grab at her. Vogelsang set the beer down, fished the mouth spray from his pocket, and treated himself to a single squeeze. The puff of soapy atomized liquid, like a cloud of frozen breath on a cold morning. I closed a deal on 390 acres in Mendocino County today, he said. Remote as the moon, with a cabin on it. Doust looked up from his reading, and with year-round water, I noticed that he hadn't bothered to remove the rain slicker. It billowed round him like an aniline tent, a glistening yellow barber's gown tucked into the neck. He pawed ineffectually at a strand of wet hair that dangled alongside his nose, then went back to the magazine. That's right, Vogelsang said. A creek and 2 separate springs. It was 12:30. I'd heard the rite of spring. It was raining. I was tired. I wondered what Vogelsang was driving at. Sounds nice, I said. We're going to start a summer camp, he was smirking as if this were the punchline of a subtly developed joke. Doust chuckled appreciatively. The girl sat hunched over her untouched bottle of Moosehead Lager and stared through the wall. I got up and switched on the radio. There was a sudden hollow thumping of a distant bass drum, some machine shop noises, and then a strange, detached female voice pushing ice through the speakers. The best things in life are free, but you can save them for the birds and bees. Give me money, that's what I want. Listen, Felix, Vogelsang was saying, how would you like to make $500,000 tax-free? I sat down again. All 3 of them were watching me now. You're joking, I said. Dead serious, Vogelsang was giving me his Charlie Manson stare. He used it when he wanted you to know that he was dead serious. What? I laughed, bending for my beer. Running a summer camp. What? Running a summer camp? Cannabis? Sativa, Doust said, as softly as if he were revealing one of the secret names of God. We're going to grow 2,000 plants. Vogelsang was studying the vial of breath neutralizer as if it were inscribed with the hieroglyphs of economic calculation, with cost ratio tables and sliding scales for depreciation and uninsured loss. He looked up. Figure half a pound per plant. 1,000 pounds at $1,600 a pound. He raised the vial to his mouth, dropped his jaw in anticipation, then thought better of it. I said nothing. The plastic tube tapped at his pursed lips, mesmeric, lifting and falling to the pulse of the music. I put up the capital and provide the land. Boyd comes in every few days to oversee the operation, and you provide the labor. We split 3 ways. Suddenly I was wide awake, brain cells flashing like free game lights in a pinball machine. Vogelsang didn't make mistakes. I knew that. I knew, too, that he had a genius for making money, a genius of which I'd been beneficiary on 2 serendipitous occasions in the past. The first time we went partners on a battered Victorian in the Haight of the Haight-Ashbury district, in case you're wondering what that was. Put out $300 on a $20,000 purchase price, refurbished the place for $15 and sold it for $100. The second time he merely phoned, gave me the number of a broker, and told me to buy as much zirconium as I could. I had $8,000 in the bank and I was out of work. I made more in a week than I made all year. No, if Vogelsang was behind it, it would go. As certainly as Segovia had been born to finger a fretboard or Willie Mays to swing a bat, Vogelsang had been born to sow pennies and reap dollars. 33 and already independent of any visible means of support, he hadn't held a job since I'd known him. He knows on investments, traded in commodities, both licit and illicit, bought and sold buildings and property and God knew what else, and all with unshakable confidence and a killing instinct of an apprentice Gould or Carnegie. Like the last name Gould, in case you're wondering. That's what it says here. And his timing was exquisite, I had to admit that. He'd come to me just at the right moment, a year and a half after my divorce, a time when I was depressed and restless, a time when I was beginning to feel like a prisoner in solitary. $500,000. It was as if the head of NASA had just asked me to if I'd like to be the first man to walk on Mars. There were risks involved, sure, but that was what made the project so enticing. The frisson, the audacity, the monumental pissing in the face of society. Vogelsang wasn't going to grow 100 plants or 150. He wasn't going to be content with 15 or 20,000. No, he was going to grow marijuana like Reynolds grew tobacco. My blood was racing. When I looked up into the three faces intent on my own, I was already halfway there. I don't know a thing about growing marijuana, I said finally. Vogelsang was ready for this. You don't have to, he said, lifting himself in the chair arm. That's Boyd's department. But 2,000 plants, can one person handle that sort of thing? No way, Douse said, rustling his rain slicker. We figure you'll need two full-time people to help you out. Who they are and how you pay them is up to you. You could hire them on a straight salary or split your 500 into shares. But whatever, they've got to be willing to give up the next 9 months of their lives, and above all, they've got to be here. He paused to come up with the right word. Discreet. Rain hit the roof like pennies from heaven. The icy voice on the radio was chanting, Money, give me money. Money, give me money. We were all standing for some reason. Doust and Vogelsang were grinning. The girl's face had softened with what I took to be a sort of truculent amicability. How about your friend up in Tahoe, Vogelsang said, as if he had a sudden inspiration. I realized at that instant he'd been playing me all along, like a street corner salesman, a carnival barker making his pitch. What's his name? He knew it as well as I. Chernisky? Phil, I said, half to myself. Yeah, Phil, as if I'd stumbled across a solution to a baffling puzzle. Vogelsang took hold of my hand and pumped it into a congratulatory way. Douse showing all his long, gleaming teeth now, the girl fighting to keep the corners of her mouth from curling into a smile. I felt as if I'd just come back from sailing around the world or whipping the defending Wimbledon champ. I didn't say yes, I didn't say no, but already Vogelsang was lifting his half-empty Moosehead bottle and calling for a toast. He had an arm around my shoulder. Zombies disintegrated on the TV screen as heroes lobbed grenades at them. The cold voice chanted money in my ear. The smell of musk, of conception, of semen and the dark essence of the earth fired my nostrils. And then he flung up his hand, bottle clenched tight, like an evangelist called to witness. To the summer camp. And that's the end of Chapter 1. We'll read Chapter 2 next time. Forgive me for coughing throughout this. I'm a little bit sick and getting over it with a chest cough. But I've never read this book before, so I'm doing a blind read-through of it. Blind meaning that I've never read it before, obviously, to repeat myself. And but T.C. Boyle's a really good writer. He develops characters well. His imagery is good. His word choice is succinct and sublime. And I'm really looking forward to reading this with you. And since I live alone, I thought I'd share it and just make videos of me reading it. So peace out, everybody. Have a good day. I'm the Nature Gamer, Ryan Whittington. And I will see you in the next video.